right, countdown to the Geekcast. It's Retro here, Retro Ray again here. We've got an awesome artist for the cast today. Joe Corroney. He has done Star Wars, comic book art, Disney art. I mean, if you haven't seen his artwork, you got to go to his website, check it out. We're gonna show a couple of pieces that he's done here, and actually, we're gonna get a sneak peek at one of the pieces he's gonna have for San Diego. Um, that's releasing on the 18th, which is today. So let's get him in the room. How's it going, Joe?
Hey Ray, good to see you again.
Yeah, same here, man. It's like I always, when I first saw you, the very first time was in Emerald City, man, over 10 years ago is when I
Oh
first,
wow, really? Was that the
it was,
first time?
yeah, that
Yeah,
was
that
like
was a
the
while
first
back.
time I met you.
Yeah, I mean, I know I just saw you recently at Dallas too at the Fan Expo Dallas.
Yeah, that was good seeing you. So that was the only time I've seen you since that last time in person. I mean, we've communicated,
Yeah,
back and forth online, but from actually seeing each other in person, that was like the last time I had saw you
I didn't
for
realize
real.
it had been that long. Wow, yeah. But yeah, we've been friends online for quite a while now. So
Yeah. You've done some phenomenal work. Um, when did you when did the art bite you? Like, were you in high school, middle school? When did that start?
man, I don't remember a day. I mean, like since I was really little. I mean, I even remember. I mean, just like 2 or 3 years old, being in my bed or my crib, and sneaking crayons under the pillow. And I remember one night drawing on my wall in my childhood bedroom, and then my parents coming in, and I think I remember it because they caught me coloring on the wall in my bedroom, standing on my bed, and I think they weren't you know, I remember it because my mom yelled, but she wasn't angry. It was more of a shock, and then but I remember that vividly, her reaction. So that's like my first memory of drawing. But they forgave me and everything. I'm sure. Because my mom put me in art classes when I was really young. But I was drawing. I mean, again, some of my earliest memories were when Star Wars came out, and that's I feel I was barely 4 years old when in 1977. So seeing that movie and then just being so my imagination just lit on fire from that, and then I had the Marvel Comics adaptation uh, of the film. I had like the big Treasury edition, which was like the first I think issue or first few issues of the adaptation, and I would draw from that, because that's how I relived Star Wars as a kid. We didn't have VHS, we didn't have Blu-ray, we didn't have streaming. Even '77, that was before everyone had VHS at that point. So like those next few years, I was reliving Star Wars through the comic books and through the action figures, but not just reading or playing with the toys. It was also drawing the action figures, drawing from the comic books, and recreating those characters. So I mean, I was 4 years old barely when when the art thing really, I remember it really hitting in for me, and then it just kind of never stopped from there. I was My mom put me in art classes when I was like 8 years old, and then private art classes on the weekends, and then I just kind of knew at an early age that I wanted to be an artist, and eventually, like an illustrator.
Nice. That is so cool. I mean, like I said, that's something that I feel from my perspective is that you have to have that passion, and then if having school helps a lot too as well.
Oh
But
yeah,
there's some people who don't even need the school, and it just comes natural to them.
oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm grateful for the teaching and the instruction I got. I mean, these days, a lot of younger artists, they're like, I mean, I appreciate the regiment that there's some things you get out of one-on-one instruction from professors and teachers and art classes that you don't really get off of YouTube or online. But however, I mean, I see lots of artists who don't go to art college like I did, and they're very successful. They're very talented, and especially today with technology being so accessible, people can watch videos on YouTube and learn, techniques and secrets and processes on how to illustrate, or how to draw, or especially how to paint digitally. And granted, I was brought up through schooling pre-internet. I mean, internet really kicked in when I was in college. Um, and then digital art became a thing when I was in college. I remember my sophomore year playing with Photoshop for the first time, and in art school, and other art programs. And so luckily, I mean, I came in at the infancy of those art programs, but I had all this traditional training too, prior to that, all from my childhood, all through high school, even all through college. I was drawing and painting by hand, but I was also just getting my feet wet in digital illustration at that time. So it's been good for me to have that training to fall back on, because all my traditional techniques I learned doing stuff by hand, I that informed my digital illustration as well. So a lot of kids these days maybe don't do painting by hand or drawing by hand, and that's fine. But for me, I'm appreciative that I get to flex those muscles of like the old school techniques too.
Nice. So then you getting back to you doing both. So you do digital and you do actual sketch art. So you do both?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, for years I was drawing comic books for different publishers. Primarily IDW Publishing, and a little for Dark Horse, a little for Marvel, a couple things for DC. But even so, like, not even just comic books. I was doing tons of sketch cards. I, I was, drawing tons of covers, and those are all hand drawn, and then they would be colored digitally. So, and that was the colors I would work with. Even though I could paint digitally, I was often working with my pal Brian Miller from Hi-Fi Color. So Brian Miller and I would team up on my covers, and I'd draw, he'd color, I'd go back in and refine stuff or tweak things that I wanted to see. But we had a real like simpatico with our techniques and our sensibilities as illustrators. So we worked together for like 10 years on a lot of my comic book covers, and then in other illustrations. But nowadays I still do stuff by hand, but I mean, I'm primarily fully digital when it comes to a lot of my illustration work. And that means I'm just drawing and painting directly on my Cintiq, which is like a Cintiq is like a giant, like a big iPad, like a computer monitor, but you're drawing and painting directly on the screen. So that said, I mean, that's a lot of my studio work, my publishing work is done that way. But a lot of my commissions, sketch covers, sketch cards, I'll do those by hand and color those by hand, and then that's original hand drawn artwork for collectors.
Nice.
The studio work is usually digital.
So you mentioned that you didn't go to art school.
No, I did. I was
Oh,
just
you
talking
did?
about,
Oh, okay, okay.
yeah,
Other people. Okay, okay.
yeah.
So
My
you.
sophomore year in art school that's when I mentioned. That's when I first discovered digital illustration. Like, I was playing with Photoshop in
Oh,
art
okay, okay.
college around my sophomore year, which would have been like 1992, 93, 94 even. I think maybe it was my junior year. It might have been 94, um, but yeah, around that time I was in art college.
Nice.
Yeah, so that's when I was. I that's where I got a lot of my fundamentals there too.
That is so cool. I mean, and that's the thing about with artists is it's like you when you get the either from like the comic book writer or for a commission, they
Hmm.
basically tell you they just describe to you what they're wanting. How
Yeah,
do you kind of like do a couple of quick sketches to kind of get a feel what you want to do, and then you kind of pick between the one you're going to do. Because I know a lot of people when they do the sketches, they use the blue pencil, and then they
Hmm.
use,
Yeah.
and then they're going back and follow up with the other one. But
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
actually like an old animation technique of the non-photo blue of sketching, and then and honestly, that's also how I sketch when I do stuff by hand. Not every artist does that, but I do use the non-photo blue pencil when I'm sketching, and then I'll use a darker traditional pencil on top of that to kind of, I layer my pencils that way. And it's interesting because it's such an old school way that, and I did have animation classes when I was really little. I took animation courses, and I took some animation courses in college too. So that process of drawing in the non-photo blue, it's more of a waxier pencil, and I like it for different. And I'll get back to the point of your question, but I like sketching in the non-photo blue for a few reasons, because it's that type of pencil it's waxy, so it tends to be, I can sketch with it and get some nice bold lines and be really expressive. And I like the way that pencil reacts to paper, and a lot of animators do. I think it's a looser way of sketching, but then I'll go back with like a HB or a 2H or something, or even a 6H, and I'll start to refine the sketchiness and to form the shapes of the drawing. But yeah, to answer your first part of your question, we'll often, like with a comic book, we'll get a script from a writer or from a publisher. A writer will be working for the publisher, the editor or the publisher will send me a script, and then I tend to, like, even if it's just a cover, if it's not, and a script will be like almost like it's like a movie script. It reads very similar, the way it's broken down, like scene to scene, page to page, panel to panel usually. So they tend to be pretty specific. So the actual scripts don't leave a lot of questions necessarily, but they can also be open to interpretation as well as an artist. But if it's just like a cover, or if it's like an illustration for Star Wars, or a poster, for example, if I'm designing and illustrating a poster for The Mandalorian or something, it's like basically, either I'll pitch them ideas or they'll pitch me what they want to see. Like, oh, we want a poster of this character, and I'll do some rough sketches in my sketchbooks, but oftentimes what I show the publisher is a rough color version, like a mock-up.
Yeah.
And I might even give them like 3 or 4 choices, and they might go, oh, we don't like these ones, but we like this one, or oh, we like both of them, maybe we pursue both, or maybe you pick one. So like sometimes it'll be more of a specific thing, and then sometimes I'm just pitching ideas to the studio or the publisher, and like, hey, what do you think about this? Was this something you'd like to see? And it's just, every project can be a little different. Every studio or publisher can be different. With comic books specifically, even with comic book covers, there's usually a plot involved, and at least they'll send me like a rough idea typed out of what they want, and then I'll try to capture that. Or sometimes they'll just be like, my editor would be like, hey, we need a cover by Monday, and it's like Thursday or Friday. So I'm like, oh, I can just come up with something. They're just like, just make sure it has this character on it, and whatever. So I mean, sometimes it's like that. It just depends.
Yeah, I mean, when you do your work, I mean, the likenesses that you do, the detail you're able to pull off on them, like the Wonder Woman we got in the background here.
Oh yeah,
which is my favorite one. I like them. I got it for, like I said, I got it for my buddy.
Oh yeah, nice.
Like this one, I mean, dude, you captured everything. Now, was this done digitally?
So it's a combination. So like that canvas version, which you have in the gold frame, that was done primarily digitally, and then I printed on canvas, and then I enhance it with hand embellished techniques. So I go back on top of it and add some little additional accents. I might add a border to it. you know, just like color pencils or maybe some white highlights throughout. And it's a combination of those hand embellishments, which makes it a one of a kind piece
Yeah.
versus like buying a print version of it.
Yeah.
So my canvas versions tend to, like the one you have, it's mostly like, 90-95% digital, but with like 5 or 10% of hand embellishments in it, depending on what it is exactly or what the piece might be. But the canvas versions tend to be more, I don't do those very often, so they tend to be much more exclusive and much more collectible. So
Yeah, like I said, the stuff you've done, it's just crazy from the comic book covers. I mean, you've done Doctor Who, you've done X-Files. I mean, how was it when you got the first call getting out of art school to work on Star? Well, technically, let's go back. What was the first IP that you got to work on? And it wasn't, I guess, was it Star Wars or which was the actual first IP you worked
yeah,
on?
I mean, Star Wars was really early, and it was right out of art college. But
Oh,
I mean,
nice.
I was getting published doing independent comics while I was in art college. So I
Wow.
was around 18, 19 years old when I got my
Whoa.
first project, but it was so small time. It was very small publishing, right? So
Yeah.
it was a local publisher in the Midwest, but I got to work with some cool creators on the comic. So that these were writers who had written for DC. The cover artist was Keith Giffen, who had done a ton of DC work. So I was working with, I was doing the sequentials for this series, but it was just this small. I only did a few issues for it, but that was my first, professional work that got published for an independent publisher in college. And then from there, I did some gaming artwork for a role playing game company, like the Champion. I don't know. I'm dating myself. It was the Champions role playing game,
Yeah.
and Champions was like the generic version of the Marvel role playing game that like TSR used to do back in the day.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So that was like, the old school modules and the books, and it's just like what D&D still is basically, but it was for superheroes. So I was doing a lot of illustrations for these gaming modules and these source books for this role playing game in college as well. So I was getting professional work and getting published while I was going to school.
That's cool.
So it was, yeah, I'm drawing comic book pages in my art history class, and my teacher didn't really care for that. Some of my other illustration teachers were like, oh, they were so excited that I was doing actual professional work, in their classes. They didn't care. They were like, this guy over here, he's doing it. He's actually ahead of the curve. He's getting published. So a lot of artists would wait till they graduated before they pursued, an art career. But I knew in high school at that, like once I realized you could make a living doing art, and it was probably maybe junior high, and then on into high school, like I knew at that point for sure I wanted to be a comic book artist. So I knew pretty young. And so then my freshman year in art college, I started going to comic conventions and showing my artwork.
Dang.
And I think it was my sophomore year is when I went to a Comic Con in Ohio, and showed my portfolio, and some publishers liked my stuff. And so I didn't want to wait until I graduated. I wanted to be a comic book artist. So
Nice. That's pretty cool, man. Because like I said, when I was talking to you before, we started recording, um, a lot of people don't get that opportunity right away. I mean, because it's a big step and it's a scary step too. Because
hmm
some artists, um, when they're working on their stuff, they really some are perfectionists and they feel that it's not good enough. But in reality, I
yeah,
mean, it is good. But to them, they don't see it as that way. So it kind of prevents them from actually getting past that box, even though their art is
yeah,
there. Sometimes they need
hmm
that push to do that. But that
yeah,
it looks like
absolutely.
you were at an early age. I mean, to be that young and doing that already, man. When I was your age, I was
Yeah,
too busy thinking about going partying.
yeah, I was pretty. Yeah, I was like, yeah, I was pretty chill, like the kid next door kind of guy. Like I didn't. All my friends were partying, and I was always just wanting to draw and paint and
Nice.
watch movies and watch cartoons. I mean, I was a geek from day one, you know. So, but yeah, I thought I was really young, you know, getting published, right? And then I did a panel at Denver Comic Con probably 4, 5, 6 years ago, and I met Dennis Cohen, who is a great Batman artist for DC, and you know, one of my early influences. And we did a panel together. And I'm sitting next to Dennis, and we were talking, and he tells the crowd, you know, his backstory, and he got published when he was like 16 for Marvel doing pinups. But he lived in New York, so he was going to like Marvel Comics offices, hanging out with like John Romita, and hanging out with Frank Miller, and meeting all the some of his mentors were like
Casada and all them.
Well, I mean, no, we're talking way before then. This is like Dennis Cohen is an older gentleman. He was doing Batman in the 80s, and even into the 90s. So he was, I mean, his mentors were like the old school guys. And he would go, he would go into the offices, and that's how, they took him under his wing, and he ended up doing some pinup work for Marvel, getting published when he was 16, 17. So he started out really young too. And I was trying to wrap my mind around that, like, wow, that was even like 2 or 3 years before me. And he was that dedicated and that, talented. But yeah, Dennis Cohen's an amazing DC Comics Batman artist and he still does great work. He's still around. So, but yeah, he was pretty young when he got published too.
So who was your idols growing up in comic world that you kind of eventually, of course, I'm pretty sure you got to meet and everything, but who was like your people you looked
at? I mean, I had tons of them. Like, it's interesting because I've always been pursuing two paths of illustration, like comic book art and then like illustration, which doesn't always include comic books, but like illustrators like Drew Struzan, or Ralph McQuarrie, or but then there is some crossover too, like some of these, like these Bill Sienkiewicz, he's a great illustrator, but he's also primarily known for comics. But or Alex Ross, who's an amazing painter, primarily known for comics, though. Those are sort of later influences for me. But early on when I was a kid, like I grew up, man, I loved John Byrne. I loved Mike Zeck. Those were two of my favorite comic book artists, because Mike did tons of GI Joe covers, and I loved the Punisher as well. So I worship Mike Zeck's art, and then I finally got to meet him and hang out with him and go to dinner with him at a small convention in Michigan a few years back. And super nice guy. He was so chill and humble and just so casual. And I was just like, this guy's awesome. He was just the friendliest and the best. So, so like those kind of artists I admired. Frank Miller, Howard Chaykin, Bernie Wrightson. I mean, you name it, Mike Mignola. Those were all artists in like grade school and high school and college that I just worshipped, so, and over the years I've gotten to hang out with some of them and meet them and at different, I do so many conventions, so eventually you run into everybody, but
yeah, you're pretty much
all the
big shows. You do all the big shows. You're always going out to New York, San Diego. I mean, and your setups are always nice. So you always,
thanks.
Especially San Diego. I like how when you do San Diego, you literally have your paintings on the walls.
That. Oh, thanks.
Because of course you got more room there compared to some other shows. So
yeah, that booth is not cheap either, though. So it's like it allows me to spread out a little more, but I can actually put up my actual paintings and stuff. But yeah, that's an expensive booth. But I love being at San Diego. But yeah, I do a lot of shows. I mean, my goal is to do less shows and focus more on art, and I'm I'm always trying to straddle that, and so eventually I'll be cutting back. I mean, I do like 20 shows a year
Wow.
usually, and I try. I'm like, okay, eventually that is going to come down, and I'll be able. But the shows do really well for me, so it's like, well, I can't miss all these big shows because they do really great for me. So it's like, and it's always a struggle because I'm always like, I need more time to make more art. So, but that is going to change here pretty soon in the next year or two. I'll be slowing down on shows, and I mean, I'll still do them, but I probably won't be doing as many, and then I'll be able to focus more on my illustration work. So,
How is it when you doing your Star Wars stuff and you have posted online a couple of times where you get to the actual actors get to see their pieces and they
mhm.
sign their art.
Yeah.
How is it like when you get to meet them? Are you kind of starstruck or are you kind of already like, kind of
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't happen as often anymore. I mean, occasionally it does happen. I think the latest time I didn't get to meet him, but he did sign my artwork for me was Oscar Isaac at New York Comic Con
oh,
last year.
nice.
So he was the main guest of honor at New York Comic Con. So for the art auction, they were taking artwork from the artists, and all the charity went to St. Jude's Cancer Research Hospital for Make a Wish Foundation. And so I donated a Poe Dameron painting. It was like the Wonder Woman. It was a digital painting, but it was canvas, and I had hand embellished it and treated it and framed it, so it was really a nice presentation. And I donated that to the art auction. So they got Oscar to sign the painting, so that sold in the art auction. I don't know for how much, but as a favor, he signed a print of my Poe Dameron art for me.
Wow.
So I have that. Actually, I don't know if you can see it. Oh my god, yeah, you can.
Oh, okay,
Wait,
right there. Yeah.
that's it right there. So
Nice.
there's a Poe Dameron print that's signed by Oscar Isaac on my wall there. So
That's
I wasn't there when he signed it, but the people handling the art auction, I gave them the art, then they gave the print back to me, and they're like, "Yeah, Oscar signed it." I was like, "That's awesome." So, but in the past, I've met Carrie Fisher and Mark Hamill and Peter Mayhew and Jeremy Bullock. I mean, and if you had told me as a little kid, because Star Wars is why I became an artist,
wow.
and I pursued Star Wars art right out of college. That's when I got my first gig doing Star Wars for Lucasfilm. So if you had told me when I was little that I get to meet these actors who were my heroes as a kid, like these characters were larger than life. I mean, everyone's like, Boba Fett, whatever. But back then, Boba Fett was Boba Fett. Like, that was the man. And Darth Vader, David Prowse, getting to hang out with David Prowse before he passed away, at different events, and just having intimate conversations and dinners and hangout time with him. I still can't believe it, and that happened, 10 years ago. So it for me as a Star Wars fan, it it never gets old. It blows my mind how fortunate I've been to have these experiences.
So you're living the dream.
I mean, it may not be everyone's dream, but for me as an artist and a Star Wars artist and a Star Wars fan, yeah,
I
for
mean,
me, yeah,
dude, I mean, you can't ask for anything more. I mean, perfect example when you mentioned Fisher, Carrie Fisher. I mean,
yeah,
this piece that you did, this one
yeah,
came out so awesome, and of course, it has the dates on it and everything. This was an
hmm
exclusive as well that you did. This was
hmm
beautiful. I mean,
oh,
how
thank you.
did you already when you put this together? Did you already have an idea of what you were gonna do to pay homage to all this Leia picks?
Yeah, I mean, it really was just I was asked by Denver Comic Con back in 20, like right after she had passed, because she passed in December 2016, and I was scheduled to be a guest that following summer at Denver Fan Expo, and so was Carrie. She was going to be one of the major guests at Denver.
Oh,
It was Denver Pop Culture Con before it was Fan Expo now, but she was going to be a guest that summer in 2017. She had passed in December. Um, the promoters reached out to me as a Star Wars artist and said, "Hey, we if you we would love for you to do something if you to, as a memorial piece for Carrie. So that's something that we can just give out to our fans or give out to the volunteers of the event and the VIP members of the event. We're just going to give this poster away. And I was like, yeah, I mean, I could do something, because Princess Leia is also one of my very favorite Star Wars characters. She's up there with Darth Vader and Boba Fett. And just over the years, for whatever reason, I've always gravitated towards her. She's such a strong character in Star Wars, such a profound character, that I've always gravitated towards her in my illustration whenever I've been working on projects for Lucasfilm and then Disney eventually. So I would often use her. I would work with the character a lot. So it was just something. When I got asked to do it, I mean, when she died, we all felt horrible. I mean, it was. I still feel, like I still get choked up when I think about it. But I mean, I got to meet her back in 2013 at a Star Wars convention. I gave her a poster of my other Princess Leia art, the Slave Princess, which was a Star Wars Celebration poster I had done for the event. And it's, Princess Leia in her bikini and with Boba Fett going onto the sail barge, and she's resisting, she's pulling on the chain, and it's a really popular image I did years back. And so I got to give that poster to her, and she loved it. She put her arm around me. She kissed me. I froze up. I was like, oh my God, Princess Leia kissed me. So getting to meet her in person and have that experience on top of already being a lifelong fan. So when she passed away, it was really hard, but I had to do something. And so when they asked me, I Denver Comic-Con, I was like, yeah, like, of course I need to do this, process the feelings and all that. So I wanted to do something that showed her legacy in Star Wars. I think Last Jedi I don't think it had come out yet, but it was after Force Awakens. So yeah, I wanted to do something that showed all of her appearances in Star Wars up to that point in the film canon. And that's why we see the progression of her character from A New Hope and Empire, Return of the Jedi, Force Awakens, and then at that point, The Last Jedi, which was technically the last Star Wars movie she filmed. And then
yeah,
so
it came out beautiful. I mean, that was this one beautiful piece right there. That's why I had to use this as one of the things that show fans. If people have not seen your, which I don't know how they have not seen your art, but it's just one of the ones I pulled to show fans.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you.
And then also too, the one, of course she's coming back when they announced it at Celebration. You also did the Rey piece.
Yeah, I did that for Disney. Yeah,
this one is, oh dude, I can't wait to see what you're gonna do. I mean, of course, we won't know until later because, of course, the next movie that she's coming out in.
Right.
This,
I love Rey. Yeah, she's a great character. I mean, I know not a lot of the older Star Wars fans aren't on board with the sequels and the sequel trilogy and those characters. For me, like, I know they're not perfect movies, but technically neither is the classic trilogy, even though it's so revered, and those are the pinnacle of Star Wars for me and everyone. But I do enjoy the sequel trilogy. I do love these characters, especially Rey and Kylo. I love that dynamic. So getting to work with Rey for me is always a treat. And that was a piece I did for Disney parks. It was actually exclusive artwork that if you went to the Disney parks, you could actually buy that artwork. It was right after Force Awakens had come out.
This came out, like I said, that was beautiful. I'm looking forward to what new piece of Rey you're going to do with the new movie.
Oh, thanks.
Of course, you're going to be in San Diego this year, and there's an exclusive piece that you're working on that fans will be able to get to. How are they going to be able to get their hands on this piece before we show it?
Oh, yeah. So I did a new piece for Mandalorian Season 3, specifically focusing on one particular character. I'll let you reveal it. But this artwork, it's a brand new poster So it's through Lucasfilm, it's through Disney, and it's through their licensor Trends International. So Trends has a website, and it's called shoptrends.com. So the week of San Diego Comic Con, if you go on to shoptrends.com, you'll be able to purchase this exclusive poster online only. It won't be available through me at my booth, but it will be. It's a timed release, and it features Bo-Katan and most of the characters from Mandalorian season 3. And it's a big it's almost movie poster size. Like it's I think it'll be 24 by 36, so it's pretty
Oh
big.
wow.
It's a big poster. It should be, I think it might be $30, or it could be 20. I'm not sure. They might offer it for 30, I believe, since it's an exclusive for Comic Con. But it's an online exclusive. It'll be on sale just that week during Comic Con. But it's not limited. It's not numbered. So it's however many people want.
Sells out
They
pretty
can buy
much.
this poster. It's called the poster is called the Ballad of Bo-Katan. Um, so in season 3, we see how the armor says, your song hasn't been written yet.
Yeah.
When she tells that to Bo-Katan Kryze. So I was like, oh, that's a cool line. And like her song hasn't been written yet, but we're watching, you know, we're watching some of the verses of that song right now in The Mandalorian. So I wanted to, kind of capture the. She's such a great character, and Katie Sackhoff does so great with her. So bringing her to life from the animation when she did the voice for Clone Wars and Rebels. So I wanted to do a heroic Bo-Katan, and this was actually an idea I pitched Lucasfilm, and they agreed to it. They were like, "Oh yeah, sounds great," and then we worked it out, and there it is. So
Dude, I mean, the detail, okay, for one, the background, you see the helmet and the fit and the background piece. That is awesome. And then you see the ships, which is the battle they were battling in the sky.
right,
You've got the troopers that are based off of the whole Boba Fett concept
yeah, I love
kind
those
of.
troopers. Yeah, they were cool.
Yeah, I mean, dude, you literally did everything. You got her sitting on the throne. You've got
Yeah,
the armor. You've got Mandalorian right there. I mean, dude, you captured
I tried
everything on
to.
it.
Yeah, I tried to like capture the feel of season 3, but also, I wanted to put so much more in it, but it was already so like, I was like, well, how do I keep it epic? And just, I mean, there were a few other Mandalorians I wanted to put in there. There was a couple other things I wanted to hit, but I was like, at some point it becomes too much and too busy, so I had to pull back a bit. But
Oh man, that
I
looks
wanted to,
gorgeous.
show the dog fight that with the in those early episodes when they're fighting the TIE interceptors over Bo-Katan's castle, and yeah, the iconic pose on the throne. I wanted to work that in there for the fans, and then my favorite part I got to paint might be that little duel that's like where she's battling Moff Gideon with the dark saber.
Yeah, right there in the
Um,
bottom corner.
yeah, yeah. So that was really fun to put that in there and paint that. But yeah, it was like, she's such a popular character. When I go to conventions, I see so many Bo-Katan cosplayers, and Katie. I get to see Katie at all these different conventions, and I was like, the character made such an impact this season. I really wanted to celebrate the character with some new artwork.
Oh yeah, check that
Oh, there we go.
out.
See, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah,
Well, I
yeah. I
fell in
got.
love with Katie back when she did Star Battlestar.
Yeah, yeah. She's awesome on that show. Yeah,
Yeah, well,
yep.
see, I was iffy. I was skeptical because I'm like, they're replacing, Starbuck with the girl. I'm like, oh my god, and she knocked it out of the park. And then after that, I fell in love with her. And then when she came on a Star Wars, Clone Wars, and then Star Wars Rebels, I was kind of like, oh my god. And then when she got
Mhm.
cast as live action, that was just it. I was like,
It was
perfect.
perfect. Yeah, I mean, sometimes the actors like just like with Lars Mikkelsen being cast as Thrawn, like I mean, he looks like the character. He is the character. He voiced the character in Rebels. So it's like when they can make those transitions to live action, I think that's the coolest thing.
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, and it's a funny thing too. Like, I take it, I I can tell you watched Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels a lot of people didn't watch it because they felt it was just for kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
they're missing out.
yeah, exactly. And I watched it, and I even picked up the comics as well. The Clone War ones, where when they came out with that run they did,
Mm-hmm.
but nobody really picked them up because it wasn't Star Wars supposedly canon at the time.
Yeah, it was like a lower level of canon. We're not,
Y-
you take it with a grain of salt kind of thing.
Yeah, I
The
mean,
cartoons aren't that way though. I mean, even George, like even when Lucasfilm was producing Clone Wars and when they were producing Rebels, I mean, I know the average fan's not going to be aware, but like, it was through publishing, through licensing, through George himself that, no, these things are canon. Like you may, maybe the comic books aren't, maybe the novels aren't all, there's different levels of canon, but just below the live action films were the animated series. So
yeah,
those were meant to be taken seriously, and us as hardcore Star Wars fans embracing Star Wars, whether it's animated or novels or comics or whatever, video games, like we paid attention, and the
yeah,
ones that paid attention were rewarded because now people are like, oh, Ahsoka, like, well, she was a cartoon character, but she's in the Mandalorian. Like, yeah, no, those animated series, not only were they canon, they were such great stories. I mean, some of the best Star Wars is Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels, and
okay.
now Bad Batch.
So I got to ask. So when you first saw Bo in live action for the first time,
Oh yeah,
what was your reaction? Like, okay, yeah, we knew she was going to be the character, or well, technically it was rumored and all that stuff, but
yeah,
when I actually saw her in person on the screen, I literally just freaked out. Like I
yeah,
was like a kid in a candy store because I was like, they got it down to a T. Her
yeah,
hair,
yeah,
I mean everything.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. She's such a great character. For me, what impacted me, I think, was the fact when they revealed her, she takes off the helmet. When we first see Bo-Katan fly in on that little water frigate with
yeah,
Mando and Grogu, and she rescues them, and we see the other Death Watch Mandos that show up, and it's like just them showing up, and then obviously her revealing herself. To me, that made such an impact because it validated for all of us, like our fandom and our our belief in shows like Star Wars Rebels and Clone Wars. Like, yeah, we know all that time that we spent invested in those great stories and that in the great animation, but
yeah,
also the great stories and the great characters, and now to see them show up and stand toe to toe with like the Mandalorian, who ends up standing toe to toe with Luke Skywalker, and to see
yeah,
these characters interact with stormtroopers and Imperials and these classic aliens that we all love from Star Wars, and it's like, yeah, like that. I felt validated. Like I was happy to see Katie show up as the character. That was awesome. But like it was like, yeah, let's get more Star Wars Rebel, which we are. We're getting Star Wars Rebels season 5 basically in Ahsoka, which comes out next month. So like
yes,
those characters, which we all love, and those, Thrawn and Hera and Chopper and Sabine, like we're gonna see them show up in live action next, and that's pretty incredible. I think. I mean, that's to see it all come together over time.
yeah. I mean that's the thing about some fans. They're like us, me and you, because we follow these characters. So other people who see this show don't get the same feels that we feel.
Yeah,
And
and that's okay. I think. I mean, they're still going to. Hopefully, this. I mean, it's Dave, so I'm not. I don't have to hope, but
yeah,
I mean, I know Ahsoka's going to be great, and they're going to discover these characters for the first time.
yeah,
So hopefully they'll fall in love with them as live action, and then maybe go back and look into the cartoons and see where they came from. And for us, it's like falling in love all over again because we're getting to see our favorite characters come back. But I that new Ahsoka trailer, Sabine is amazing. Like just in that trailer, I was like she's gonna be the secret weapon of that show. I think. Like, it's great we have Hera. It's great that we have Ezra, and of course Thrawn will be amazing. But it feels like Sabine is going to be the linchpin of that show, and like we're going to follow her progression. And just seeing just a little bit of progression we get in the trailer, I was like, this is so great to see, to revisit these characters and see where they're at in the timeline now, versus where they were in Rebels years earlier.
Yeah, I mean, I've already seen it about 6 times.
Yeah, I've watched it a bunch of times too. Yeah,
But okay, this is just, I guess, because we're talking about the trailer. If you haven't seen the trailer, it's already been out. It's too late. We're already on the 18th of July. So, um, her with the lightsaber, of course, mind you, when we were watching her in Star Wars Rebels, she was learning how to use a lightsaber
yeah.
because of the black saber. Um, but part of me is like, when you hear, I don't know if it's just clips that they took in pieces, but I felt like Ahsoka was training her
Yeah, well,
as a
yeah.
Jedi.
Yeah.
So
I mean, she calls her master. I mean,
yeah,
Sabine calls Ahsoka master. So there's
yeah,
some missing history there,
yeah,
because she was learning from Kanan with the
yeah,
dark saber. But what I don't know, and what I'm hoping to find out is whether Sabine is force sensitive or not. Because I mean, you can be trained. I mean, you don't have to know the force necessarily to wield a lightsaber.
yeah,
Sabine was already a warrior who had, sword fighting skills with the dark saber. So her transitioning to a lightsaber underneath Ahsoka's tutelage, like, does that mean, wait, is a Sabine force sensitive maybe, or is she just training with the lightsaber and calling Ahsoka master just based on that? So that's really interesting to me. I mean, part of me doesn't want her to be force sensitive. I just want her to be, a kick butt warrior with a lightsaber.
yeah,
Because she's already tough. We already know from Rebels
yeah,
she's a great fighter, and she can hold her own. And having that lightsaber is sort of like the next step up. So whether she's force sensitive or not, I guess we'll have to find out. But it's cool that they're hinting that there was some training there with Ahsoka.
yeah. It's gonna be interesting, and it was cool. Cool. The cool thing about it for me is that I saw that she still had Ezra's lightsaber and stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, there's so many questions,
Yeah.
and like, okay, part of me, I hope, because of course we haven't seen the end of Bad Batch, the seasons,
Right.
so I want to know, are we going to see any of the Bad Batch characters in Ahsoka as well? There's so
That'd
many
be
questions.
interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I kind of maybe doubt that, but I wouldn't, because there's one more season of Bad Batch,
Yeah,
and that's still coming out. So, which it'll drop sometime next year, sometime. So, I don't think they would reveal. I mean, if they did, that would, because honestly, I don't think anyone from Bad Batch makes it out except for maybe Omega. So I think they're all destined to kind of, maybe not come back. But that would be a nice little treat if they did put one of the clones from Bad Batch in there, or some of the other characters. I mean, I'd love it if Cad Bane showed up in Ahsoka. That
oh yeah,
we got him in Book of Boba. I'm like, all right, yeah, like I know but this is technically, I guess, earlier, well, around the same time. I don't know. It's right in there. So
yeah.
it's like, oh, maybe Cad Bane can show up. So yeah, we'll
What
see.
one of the ones I was hoping that we were gonna get was Hondo,
Yeah. Well,
but
yeah, it's obvious. Like, why not?
yeah, so I would love to see him in Ahsoka just because of the tie with Ezra and how
Mm-hmm.
Ezra worked with, I say worked with them, but he was working with them stuff, even though the stuff that Hondo did to him, he always not say backstabbing him, but he
Yeah.
kind of treated him like he would look up to him to a certain extent, but
Yeah,
he
a
was
little
like,
bit. Yeah, they kind of had a nice partnership there, a little bit, the
yeah.
two of them. Yeah,
So I would like to see that, but like I said, there's so much, but it's going to be hard. How are you going to fit all that into 8 episodes?
yeah. Ahsoka's only 8 episodes, so yeah. I mean, and plus it has to set up Dave Filoni's Star Wars movie too. So it has this Ahsoka series is going to lead into one of the, not the Rey film, but the film after that, which Dave Filoni will be writing and directing, which is a culmination of all the Mandoverse. So, characters from the Mandalorian, characters, from Ahsoka, and then maybe even Skeleton Crew, which takes place in the same time frame. So,
Yeah.
we might see all those characters culminate, or I mean, that's the rumor, or not even rumor. I think it's even been mentioned that we're going to see all these characters, Bo-Katan, Ahsoka, Mandalorian, Grogu, all these characters come together for Dave Filoni's Heir to the Empire movie, which is so I think Ahsoka, the series, has a lot of heavy lifting to do, and it's going to be very key to see this series. I think people will miss out if they don't watch Ahsoka and then go see the next big Star Wars movie in a few years.
So Bad Batch, going back to, so we were talking about Bad Batch as well. What were your thoughts when they said good soldiers follow orders and Order 99, where he's on the Tech is on the ship? If you haven't watched it, spoilers.
Yeah, it's been a while now, but yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm talking about the fans in general.
Yeah,
Where
yeah.
he
Right.
where he falls. You know what I mean? Like he knew he had to let go
In order to
save.
rescue, yeah.
Yeah, that dude, that hit me in the
I'm
feels
telling
because
you, I get chills. I just got chills thinking about it. I mean,
yes, that
like
me
this,
too.
and with Bad Batch, you get the same. I get those same kind of chills when I think about Clone Wars season 7, or if I think about Star Wars Rebels when Kanan
Yes,
sacrifices himself like that. There's stuff in all of these animated series that are so profound and so climactic and so epic and powerful. These characters and these moments and scenes, and the one in Bad Batch with Tech. I mean, we were just like, he's such a, you know, he's such a lovable character, but he's also
yeah,
so like, he was one of those characters that was like kind of tough to love because he was so straight and he was just so,
yeah. By the
it was
book.
almost like, yeah, he was just he just kind of was just like this. He wasn't he was nerdy and dorky, but in a really good way.
Yes,
And but he was such a great character. So to lose him in the Bad Batch, the way they did it was so. It was so like oh god, we were all heartbroken. I mean,
oh yeah,
everyone like again, those were people that watched Bad Batch. Not everyone got it, but if you were a fan of the show and it's got one more season, like, yeah, you need to jump on board because it really ties into the mythology of the prequels, and then it fits that space right between the prequels and the classic trilogy. But yeah, it's such a, I love Bad Batch. I really do. I had a shirt on Bad Batch shirt on the other day. I thought I was wearing it today, but yeah, so that's a great show and lots of great characters there.
have you thought of doing a memorial piece for Tech?
Yeah, I mean, I want to do Bad Batch art, and it's a matter of making the time to do it.
Gotcha.
Like, and I love Rebels, and I don't really, I mean, I have very little Star Wars Rebels art, so um like, yeah, no, I at some point I'll do something for Bad Batch. At some point I'll do more for Star Wars Rebels. It's just like there's so many projects, and oftentimes, like, I kind of it's all about timing too. Like, if I have the time available and Lucasfilm says, hey, we want you to do this, and then it works out with my schedule, then but if they called me up tomorrow, like, we need Bad Batch art, and I'd be like, okay, well, let me reschedule and push some things to the side, we'll make time for it. Because almost everything I do, most of it's all official work. So there's very little fan art I do, but most of it's all published official work, and it takes time to go through the proper channels, and
Yeah.
there's of course a lot of critiquing and sometimes nitpicking so that things go back and forth. So, but there's some artists that they just crank out this stuff all the time, but they're doing that for themselves, not
Yeah.
officially. But
So with the Bad Batch, the very end episode, when we find out Ahsoka, Omega has a
Hmm.
sister.
Oh
Did you
yeah.
see? Did you see that? I didn't expect that to happen. I didn't see that coming. I
No, no,
was
that was a shock to find out that there were more clones based off of, we know that we already knew that she's a brother to Boba Fett because
yeah,
she's Alpha, and then or no, he's Alpha. He's the first one.
yeah,
Boba's the first. She's Omega. Technically, she's supposed to be the last pure clone that gets to age normally and has all these genetic traits that they designed into her,
yeah,
construction of her clone. So to find out that, oh wait, she's not the last, there were a few others even before her. So yeah, I mean that would make sense. So there's some older clones. So she not only does she have an older brother, but she has an older sister, and maybe there might be a few more too that share her genetic makeup. So, but I think we're going to find out Omega is still going to, even though she has a sister that's super science whatever. I think Omega we're going to find because she seems to be naturally gifted as a
yes,
warrior, as a fighter, and we're seeing a lot of the traits from the Bad Batch in her. So
yeah,
like, so we're seeing like Tech has his specialties, Hunter has his specialties, Wrecker has his specialties, but we see how she's bonded with them, but not only that, but emulates them very easily. And I
yes,
think
and she adapts.
she adapts, and I think she's going to be sort of the ultimate clone. Whereas Bad Batch were definitely very special clones, but I think she's the culmination already of all of them.
Wrapped into
And
one.
now, is there some midi chlorians in her makeup too? I don't know, but I think we're going to see that she's going to be sort of the ultimate culmination of each of the Bad Batch characters.
Nice. Oh, and
Yeah.
the thing is too. I mean, okay, now we're getting back to that. So we never know what happens to her. We know. Look how long Boba Fett has lived. So I mean, I've read the novels, and of course, if a lot of this, they're saying a lot of stuff isn't canon that's in the novels, but Boba Fett in the comics, where this is where he trains Janna to fight her brother and all that stuff in those
Hmm.
novels. Um,
The New Jedi
but
Order novels, yeah.
yeah, so technically Omega could be currently still alive in all the way up to the Last Jedi and stuff like that. So
Right.
especially leading up to it, I mean, I'm wondering if she's going to be in those other leading up to it,
You
or
know
we
what?
see her.
What would be great is if after season 3 of Bad Batch drops, which will be before Filoni's film,
Yeah,
what if we get to see an adult Omega,
yes,
in Heir to the Empire? So
that's what I'm thinking.
yeah, I think so. I mean, I wouldn't put it past them to reveal her character. I mean, I don't. Obviously, I'm hoping nothing bad happens to Omega. I don't think the clones are going to make it out by the end. They've
Yeah,
already killed off Tech, and I don't. I mean, maybe Wrecker might get away. I don't know. I hope they get away. I hope they make it. But at least I think we feel like Omega might end up going further into the timeline. So I would love to see her live action
yeah,
at some point, and the Filoni movie would line up perfectly. I think for that.
yeah. Same here. That's what I think too, dude. I really love that we're we're talking all this stuff because it's
We're
kind of
getting
cool.
so sweaty on Star Wars. I
Oh
live and
man,
breathe it every day.
dude. I okay. Like we've talked occasionally here and there, and I try not to take up too much time when you're at the you're working at the booth. It's just every time I talk to you at the times I've met you, it's so cool. You're laid back. You talk to your fans, um, and I really appreciate that you taking the time to come on the show and talk to us. Um, but now getting to talk to you more, it's just like,
You
dude,
realize how nerdy I am with Star Wars?
no, dude, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just
No, I know.
I can believe I could sit with you at a bar and we could just
Oh,
probably just sit and talk for freaking hours just about our thoughts, just kind of like Filoni and John Favreau do, where they just talk about like
Yeah.
this, that. It's just so cool that there are other people like us out there that we can just just sit and talk about this stuff.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
so cool.
Yeah,
But
yeah. I mean, I like you mentioned at conventions, fans will come up, and if I'm not careful, I'll get carried away geeking about Star Wars and being like, oh, I gotta like. Most of the time I'm really busy at
yeah,
these shows, dealing with customers and signing and selling art. But during the slow times, I'll have friends come up or fans come up, and yeah, we'll get to geek out together, and that's one of the best things about these comic cons I do, getting to share my passion for Star Wars, with people like you and all the fans out there too.
well, if we just actually had superhero car show here,
Yeah, I
actually,
saw your pictures. Yeah,
yeah. So we
I wish I
actually
was at
host.
that show. It looked amazing.
Yeah, well, that's what I was gonna say. We hosted the panels for Ahsoka. I'm Soka. Uh, for Katie Sackhoff, for Ming.
Hmm.
Um, but dude, we need to get you to come to San Antonio.
Yeah, they invited me a couple years ago when they did the show with Ewan McGregor. Right, I think it
Oh
was right
yeah,
after COVID. I think.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so they came to my tape. The promoters approached me at Dallas Fan Expo, and they're like, "Hey, we'd love to have you at our show." And I was like, "Oh, I'd love to come. When is it?" And like, "Well, it's like in 3 weeks or something." I was like, "Oh, that's too
Oh
soon. I can't make it." They thought I was local, but
yeah.
I'm out of Ohio. But yeah, I was like, and I should have planned for it this year because I saw how epic it was, and I was like, I just didn't schedule it. So yeah, if you can put me in touch with them, or I would love to come down to San Antonio and do that show.
Oh yeah, definitely. Ted, which is my boss from Countdown to the Geekcast, he has the promoter's contact info and everything
Okay.
like that. Well, maybe I'm gonna talk to him and see. Maybe we can. We're just joking about this, but like, so we had our Star Wars stuff podcast together. We're kind of all in one booth.
Hmm.
But what I was telling them, I was like, next year we're gonna need to have Star Wars stuff podcast have its own booth, us have our own booth. But dude, if we can
Yeah.
actually have like that, and then have you off to the next to us,
Yeah. Yeah.
oh,
Sure.
the whole dude, that would be crazy. Take a whole aisle just with just geeks. That'd
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
nuts.
I would love to come down if yeah, I just I had their info from a couple years ago when they approached me, and then I didn't think about it this year. They didn't reach out, and then I didn't see them. But yeah, I'll have to touch base with them and see if they're interested in having me come down, because it would yeah, it'd be easy for me to pull it off and make the trip there for next time. So
Sweet. Well, I don't want to take any more time. We're already going past an hour. Doesn't it seem like we talked for an hour?
yeah, no, it went by quick. Yeah.
But like I said, thanks again for coming on the show. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, I
Um,
think we've been trying to do this for a while, so I'm glad we finally connected.
yeah, and then, but that's not the only piece that's dropping, right? You have another one that's going to be dropping as well with this one.
Yeah, so well, it's going to be coming out probably in a month or two after.
Okay, okay, okay.
It's another it's another Bo-Katan poster that basically one of my other concepts that I had pitched multiple ideas to Lucasfilm, and they liked two of the ideas I had. So one is dropping for San Diego, and then the other one, I'm hoping it'll release within a couple months after that. It's possible. I don't know yet. I might try to work with them to hold it off and make it a New York Comic Con exclusive,
Oh,
maybe.
okay, okay.
So, or if not, it'll come out before then. So maybe September, October, we'll see. But it's a second Bo-Katan poster, featuring Katie as the character without the helmet this time. So you'll see Katie Sackhoff in the artwork, and some of the other characters from The Mandalorian, and she's got the dark saber. So it's another cool Bo-Katan poster that'll be dropping in a few months. So
Well, nice. Well, once you get your dates and you can reveal, if you want to reveal it on our show,
yeah, yeah.
we can definitely do that.
Oh, I'll
That'd
come
be
back
cool.
on anytime. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, cool, man. Well, I appreciate it. Hey guys, kind of to the Geekcast. Joe, do you have anything you want to promote? Any shows that you're
Just
doing?
yeah, just San Diego coming up here. Actually, at the time of this that we're doing this, it's San Diego's dropping in the
Next
next
2 weeks?
day.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I'll be at San Diego Comic Con. So anyone watching, anyone gonna make it out there, stop by my booth. It's 4300, booth 4300 in Hall F. So right when you go in the Hall F doors at San Diego Comic-Con, you'll see my booth right there. So stop by there, jump online that week, because my Bo-Katan poster is only going to be available during Comic-Con, so like 4 or 5 days. But you can buy it online. And then after that, I got Boston Fan Expo coming up. I'll be in Boston a few weeks later, and yeah, so just feel free to follow me online because I'll have more artwork coming out this year, some other pieces. Can't too early to talk about them yet, but once they get a little closer, I can talk about them. And yeah. So just feel free to follow me online. It's just Joe Corroney, joecorroney.com. I'm on Facebook, Instagram.
Cool, guys. And we'll also, once we have it on YouTube, we will have the links linked below, so you'll be able to click it and go directly to his site once we post it on YouTube as well. So, guys, thanks again for joining us. This is Countdown to the Geekcast. This is Retro Ray, and thanks a lot, Joe, for coming on.
Thanks, man. It's great talking. I enjoyed it.